Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on Doordarshan, India's national television channel about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and India's ethos and worldview which are shaping a better international order. Viewers, this is a special episode focused on a special book, Why Bharat Matters, authored by India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar. This book is about India's civilizational ethos, its culture, its essence and its values, its national identity, and how it's influencing its foreign policy and rising stature in the world. And viewers, this is a special episode because the author of the book himself, Dr. Jaishankar, is with us, joining us on Doordarshan. And let me welcome esteemed External Affairs Minister. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure, as always, to be in Doordarshan and to be with you.
Why Bharat Matters? First of all, many people wonder how you take out time to write books, but then you're a scholar diplomat, and we all know how much effort you put into the intellectual side of foreign policy, and that's what we are seeing in this book, sir. So to begin with, everyone is curious to know about the title and why you used the word Bharat rather than India, because your previous book was called India Way. And so why not why India matters, and what's the difference conceptually, while both terms are used synonymously? And in your view, and especially in the Narendra Modi era, how has Bharat emerged to the fore? And please tell our audiences what you, as an author, envisage by Bharat, and how has it come? And especially in the international audiences, how are people responding to this? Because we saw Prime Minister display the Bharat nameplate during the G20 summit. You yourself addressed the General Assembly at the United Nations saying Namaste from Bharat. So how has the reception been there? So two questions to start with, sir.
Well, before I come to the two questions, let me say, in a way, it wasn't that hard writing a book for this reason. Foreign ministers are required to speak quite often. And I've always written my own speeches. So if you actually are in the habit of writing and formulating and conceptualizing, then it takes a little bit more discipline to instead of doing a speech, you gel a lot of that into something longer. Why Bharat? Because a lot of people ask me exactly this question, comparing it to my earlier book, The India Way. I put it to you, to the average person, average citizen of this country. I think most people would agree that Bharat has a certain ring, a certain connotation. And it means, in a way, a certain authenticity, a certain cultural reaffirmation. I would say a degree of self-confidence, self-assurance. So it's a kind of like, look, we are coming into our own. We are who we have been in history over millennia. So if I were to take even the last 5 years, to me, the reason why I've used consciously the term Bharat with all the connotations which I have explained to you. One, of course, is I feel we've come through really a very testing 5 years, very big challenges which we've handled with a great deal of self-confidence. The biggest challenge was COVID, but we also had the Article 370, both as a decision and managing its implications. We've had, I would say, in many ways, almost unprecedented challenge vis-a-vis China. And we had a global issue which is still continuing, like Ukraine. So if you look at how we have handled all of these, I would say in many ways that self-assurance is better captured by the word Bharat. The second is, it's very complicated, it's become a much more complicated world, because to all these problems which I'm adding, there are we've also had, since last October, a very troubled situation, the conflict in West Asia. So if you look at the volatility, the polarization in the world, the very bitter arguments in the world, we've also emerged actually as a I've used the term Vishwamitra.
Yes.
It's a term which Prime Minister has put in our diplomatic lexicon, where we have actually harmonized, bridged, mediated in different ways. And the prime example of it was the G20.
Yeah.
That you had a situation where the Western Bloc and the Russians, they were so far apart, and you also had this very bitter sort of almost anger from the global South. So to bridge the North-South divide and the East-West polarization, that also required a lot of self-assurance and a lot of skill and a certain, I would say, an Indian Bharatiya ability.
An inner force, yeah.
Almost I would say a kind of a cultural ability to get everybody around the table and create that kind of sarvasahmati, which actually we saw in the G20. And I think, it's just not me saying it. If you ask people in the world, I think most people were really very impressed, almost amazed by the fact that we were able to pull it off. Then there are, I think when it comes to Bharat, the ideas of Bharat. If you look at today, what are the big issues in the world? We come up often with ideas and solutions, which is quintessentially drawn from our own experience and our culture and our traditions. And I give you 2 or 3 examples. Take, for example, how much the International Day of Yoga has spread. It is today, there's not a country, there's not a society in the world which has not embraced it, and how readily it has been accepted as a wellness,
as a universal,
yes, absolutely,
value. Yeah.
A second I would give you is actually the propagation of millets, which again was something which Prime Minister Modi led from the front. And millets, Shri Anna, is mota anaj, which people call, is something which is deep in our history. All of us, our forebears, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, they all ate millets till wheat came into our lives. And if you see today, it can be grown in arid areas, it's grown by the small farmer, it uses, its carbon footprint is less, its water usage is less, it is more nutritious. So as a contribution to food security, at a time when there was actually a cereal shortage in the world,
hunger has been growing,
hunger has been growing,
globally.
and actually inflation, food inflation has been rising. Or if you look even at sustainable lifestyle, the Western view of sustainable lifestyle is shift away from coal, but the way we have looked at it, and Prime Minister conceptualized it in Mission Life, which is each one of us actually through adjustments of our personal lifestyle can make a very important difference. So one part of it, as I said, is the self-confidence. One part is the ability to gather people. One part of it is actually to table your own ideas. One is actually to shape the agenda. If you again see the last decade, but particularly last 5 years, you look at today how much the debate on terrorism has changed, how much the debate on climate has changed. That if you see, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, even this idea, which many people think is futuristic, but which I'm very sure will happen, which is the idea of one sun, one world, one grid.
One grid, yeah. Connecting electricity across the world, yeah.
So,
sure. So clearly there is this Bharat that is more innovative, more flexible, faster, seems to be more agile and also more creative, and is also in the process becoming accepted as a Vishwaguru and Vishwamitra.
And we've also in this process been able, when it is a hard power issue, we have taken that road. When it is a soft power issue, we have also shown that capability. When it comes to idealism, we have, in many ways, shown, I would say, a generosity and a fellow feeling. But when it comes to real politics, we have been very hard as well. So this again is, I would say, something which is very much us, getting
Intrinsic
the balance
Bharatiya
right.
values, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we speak about Bharat, when we speak about our tradition, culture, we've always been someone who's been able to find the right balance, who's been able to gather people, who've been able to, what looks very difficult for other people, we know exactly how to manage it. And I think that is the big change.
Absolutely. Sir, talking about national identity, I mean, in our academic literature, we often talk about how important it is in shaping foreign policy, but only to some extent, because ultimately it also depends on the configuration of forces and the balance, and also the alliances, friendships, partnerships, opponents, the global landscape, as you have called in Why Bharat Matters. And here also you've made the point that we are now reading the global landscape more accurately. And the way you have given the example of Hanuman and Rama and all our great characters from the great epic Ramayana, and you have made the argument that there is something about our ability to map the field, and on that basis, and then we also play the game that the other nations are playing. So tell us a little bit about this, sir, because the way we have been reading the situation, one of the arguments in the book is that in the past we had misread actually the global scenarios and made strategic errors, and also in terms of our policy it was just not right. So you served in the foreign service before becoming minister for many decades. So you've seen the evolution of post-independence foreign policy quite closely, especially the second half of post-independence foreign policy. So how is Bharat better able to read the situation? You've given so many amazing anecdotes and extrapolations from the Ramayana to make this argument that we have that capacity to discern the situation. So how do you think that has been happening, sir, in the Modi era?
Well, again, a lot about when you is getting the world right. Getting the world right is very important, because if you don't understand the new forces, the different forces, the threats, the opportunities, the challenges, then obviously our own responses and our own choices are flawed. I've at various points of time referred to characters in the Ramayana in very, very different ways. I would say there is somebody like Lakshman, and I've made the case that every Ram needs a Lakshman, someone who will counsel, someone who will share, when you are sort of very emotional, who will cool you down, when you are down, who will raise your morale. I mean, the idea of someone who's balanced. So mind you, actually in the epic, Lakshman is a person with a very strong temper. It's very interesting. I mean, their relationship, when one actually gets exercised, the other cools down, and it's actually there's a complementarity there. But a second example I gave is actually Hanuman, which is that he is sent with a certain mission to Lanka, but if you actually see, he is able to do very much more than that. He is able to establish contact with Ma Sita. He is able to actually throw the entire Lanka, Ravana's court, off balance. He is able to set the city on fire. He is able to gather intelligence. He is able to make judgments about Vibhishan, which later turn out to be very accurate, or in fact Vibhishan himself. So at crucial moments, it is his understanding of the Ravana's side which actually helps the Ram and Lakshman to deal with very complicated situations. So now when this, it's really, knowledge is power, knowledge is central to diplomacy, knowledge is critical to actually dealing with the world. So we must have an updated sense, and my argument is we've got to understand today the changing world, that there are new debates, that there's a big debate about, how much to globalize, what kind of globalization. There is a debate about where can you hedge and where can you not hedge. Where should you actually make understandings, where should you keep your options open. So there's no neat, simple formula. It's a very complex
you have to make judgments,
metrics out there. But where there is, I believe, a civilizational element is, if you look actually at some very difficult situations, today actually as a society, as a people, as a leadership, there is a certain, I would say, a deliberation, a certain wisdom, a certain maturity, which is intrinsic to us, which is we understand often that there are complications. It's not,
like our epics, they themselves are quite complex and have so many characters.
Yes. So the idea that it's not so simple. Often if you look at a Western narrative, it will be, there are these two sides. This is black, this is white, this is right, this is wrong, and you must choose. Okay. Whereas our tradition, our history, our experience says, wait, hold on a minute. There are many angles to it. There is much more to this than simply that
good guy versus bad
binary choice. And in many cases, if you look at complex situations that we are dealing with, and I would say the conflict in Ukraine is one, where actually it is our considered judgment, it is that not being rushed, not being pressurized, which has helped us to take a much more, I would say, a deliberate view, a much more considered view of what is happening. And today, I must tell you, 2 years after the conflict, it's almost 2 years since the conflict started, a lot of countries today actually come to us and say, well, it's good that, someone like India, a country like India is actually talking to both sides, and maybe this will be helpful as we go along. So there is that angle. But there is also, when you have a sense of history, you can, from history, see opportunities. I give you one. During the G20, we announced this IMEC corridor.
Yeah, India, Middle East, Europe.
India, Middle East,
corridor,
Europe economic corridor. If you actually look at IMEC is thousands of years of history. That
the same routes.
From the time when Indians traveled to Europe and Europeans traveled to, this was the route that they took. Today, when we announced it, I had a lot of countries in the world, including in Europe, who see it as something very innovative, very novel, very bold. And you have to tell them, yes, it is, but it also is 1,000 years of tradition.
It's part of our history.
It's part of our history.
Yeah.
Or if I were to give you a different example, in a sense, I would say even reclaiming history, not just returning to history. It is what is happening in the maritime spaces. That after independence, if you look at it, we've really not had an integrated sense of the maritime space. And yet we are the only country after whom an ocean is named. So when Prime Minister thought of Sagar, the idea that there are many islands, there are littorals, there is sea space, they have their own unique challenges, and also that this is an area where our culture is visible. It's visible today, whether you go to Angkor or you go to Borobudur or you go even to the Mison or east coast of China.
Yeah.
Or if you go the other way around, you go to the east coast of Africa, you go to the Gulf, So our footprint is there.
Civilizational India.
Yes. Yeah, so the idea of a civilizational India today, look, we are the most populous country. We will soon be the third largest economy in the world. Okay. In pretty much every area, in one way or the other, we are making a bigger presence. But if it is underpinned by a larger civilizational
narrative
based on actuality, then it gives you a very, very different standing. So all these are actually very helpful. And to my mind, actually, if you have to make this in a sense a part of the personality of India before the world, then first of all we must ourselves be proud of it.
I mean, self-consciousness
yes,
is
yes, there has to be that self-consciousness, that awareness. I mean, if we deny where our own history, our own past, our own tradition, then how can we stand before the world and say, we are a great civilizational power? So what we will be is very much dependent on what we were.
Absolutely.
And what we are. And I think that's, in a sense, the international relations side, which I was really trying to capture.
Sir, there's one concept in Why Bharat Matters that struck me as a very striking, it's something that needs deeper extrapolation and analysis, the idea of the Ramarajya, or of a well-governed state. And you've said that is in many ways our model. And in the Modi era, there are many innovations we have done domestically for good governance that are now finding resonance globally, and other countries are wanting to adopt some of our good governance practices. Earlier, we know very well the so-called Bretton Woods institutions and others used to actually lecture to developing countries saying, this is the model and you have to do good governance. But now here is a democratic country, a developing country like Bharat, but which has some successes, notable ones, and which could become examples and templates for others to follow. And to me, that looked like that is the extension of the Ramarajya for global governance also. So please talk about that, sir, and how India can shape global governance using the Ramayana and the Ramarajya. And please tell our audiences, because there's a lot of pride in our culture, but we don't know exactly how the rest of the world will receive these ideas. So how has been the reception, and when you talk to people, when you talk about our domestic successes, how do they react? And you often talked about they're curious and they want to know how they can adapt it. So tell us some examples, sir.
Well, what are the two words which will come to your mind? Suppose we are talking Ramarajya, okay? And I say, okay, here's Ramarajya, here is the modern contemporary world. What two words, what two concepts or characteristics would fit in here? I think one would be a concept of rules and fairness. One would be a sense of justice, right?
And equity and fairness.
Fairness, justice, rules. Now, look at today the debate in international relations, in world affairs. What is the term which is used? Rules-based order, rule of law. Okay. So you are saying, in a sense, that concept, except that concept you are taking it as though it's derived from some Western political science pronouncement. I am trying to remind you, saying it's deep in your own history, that it is actually embedded in us. Because at the end of the day, what is a global order? A global order does for the world what a society does for a country, which is, in a society, we all have our rights, we all have our interests. Somewhere we kind of reach a accommodation, and we accept that there are certain norms and methods by which we must conduct ourselves, which is for common good, right? Now, that is today what we are, when we speak about a global order, what are we trying to do? We're trying to do exactly that. So you hear today the word global good, you hear the word global commons. I put it to you, when Ram and Lakshman are actually asked by rishis to come to forests and say, my penance and my prayers are being interrupted. What are they doing? They're actually going to the global commons to serve the global commons.
Yes, fighting the demons.
Yes, I mean, today
Keeping
you
the
would
commons
say
safe, yeah.
you would say the global commons is under threat from traditional and non-traditional threats, and you are doing something to deal with it. You know, so in a sense, what is there, if you put it in a different parlance, you kind of modernize it in a way. You know, it is right there. Now, why is that important? Because we are seeing today that if there are stresses and pressures and volatility, it is arising from this disregard for rules, disregard for norms. So, a very obvious case, for example, is UNCLOS, the UN Convention on Law of the Sea. So, today, if countries sign up to UNCLOS, then there is a whole responsibility which comes with that. You know, you can't pick and choose. Now, we believe that actually we have set an example, that when we had a dispute with Bangladesh, we went to a tribunal, we accepted arbitration, but we said, okay, whichever way the arbitration goes, for us, against us, or whatever, we will accept it. Now, you contrast that with what happened in South China Sea. So, you know, there is today a value to
Ramarajya and to
the idea of following rules.
Yes.
You know, or if I put it to you even bilaterally, you know, what is today one of our big issues with China? The fact that we had agreements in 1993 and 1996, which forbade us to bring large forces to the line of actual control. Now, if you know, you violate it without an explanation, or credible explanation certainly, then, you know, how do we then conduct a relationship where the basic adherence to norms and to, in this case, to written agreement is not there. So, one part of it is that. The other part of it, I would say, when it comes to justice, I will look at COVID. You know, COVID was very unjust in the way the powerful treated the weak. That if you looked, I mean, even today, if you go to Africa and you go to Latin America, you know, people get emotional about how they were treated during COVID. That the vaccine problems, the medicine problems, the travel restrictions which were put on them. Now, when we speak about justice, I think we actually lived up to our tradition by doing vaccine Maitri. And, you know, I think it should, if there are today, let us say, 50 odd developed countries in the world, whatever, 40, 50. I mean, they should be asking themselves, why is it a country, a developing country, below $3,000 per capita, was willing to send vaccines out, even when it was vaccinating its own people?
Yes.
Whereas you had much richer countries, more powerful countries, who were hesitating.
And they had export bans and all these things, restrictions.
To do so. Or I think, okay, if you say, okay, COVID is an unusual period, put that aside. You know, today, one of the fundamental problems in the international economy is what we may call an over-concentration. That manufacturing is centered in a few locations. That over-concentration is being leveraged in different ways. So, the rest of the world today is finding that its own manufacturing is being eroded. It's not able to compete against subsidies. That they often, whether they are a resource supplier, whether they are a market, that they actually find themselves at the mercy of others. So, today, how to democratize production? Because when we speak about justice, you know, one of the problems today is globalization. Globalization is seen as unjust. In the world, the developing see globalization is not benefiting them. Even in developed countries,
there's a backlash.
The working class, the middle class feels globalization. So, you know, I don't want you to think of Ram Rajya as some kind of very noble, ephemeral, you know, kind of dream world. There is sound common sense in Ram Rajya. You know, a well-governed society, a polity, is a model for a well-governed global international community.
So there's also the element of performance and delivery in the foreign policy you've highlighted in Why Bharat Matters. Is not just our regaining our ancient civilizational self-confidence, but also you've given the analogy of Hanuman and others, that we are faster today, more agile in saving lives, in responding to the needs of developing countries, which is part of the justice agenda we just spoke about. And here, the criticism used to be the Indian foreign policy, we don't implement, we promise, Indians talk big and they don't deliver. That is how it used to be. But in the Modi era, we have made it much faster, speedier, and the beneficiaries on the ground, you have mentioned 78 countries where we are doing connectivity, infrastructure, socio-economic development projects. There, Bharat seems to be delivering, sir. And this is different. Like Hanuman, we are, if required, we'll pick up the mountain and we'll go and save lives. So that kind of Bharat we are seeing when there are disasters with humanitarian action and disaster, HADR actions. All these are now, we are the first responder in many of the cases. And even slower long-term sustainable development goals of many countries, we are helping them achieve their goals while we are also doing these. So what is this about Bharat which is so agile and fast, sir? And what have we done in terms of our administration and in our governance, in our approach to foreign assistance especially, where it's moving a lot faster and is satisfying people around the world that yes, finally India is delivering?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because, two phrases which Prime Minister, you often hear him use. In English, it is often that we should be the right mix of tradition and technology. In Hindi, it is that we should be a mix of virasat and vikas. So you often hear him say that. So till now we have been talking of tradition and virasat, so let us talk of technology and vikas. I think number one, your improved domestic efficiencies also reflect outside. That how well we perform in a neighboring country or a faraway country will be in somewhere related to how well we perform at home.
Sure.
So what we have seen in these 10 years is actually a very major improvement in our own capabilities. But that's not enough. Prime, we have very early, I think virtually in his first few months, Prime Minister started a review program called Pragati. So what happens in Pragati is a certain number of projects, different domains are picked. Originally, it was largely a domestic development review. And then he himself directly kind of interrogates people, what is the hold up, why hasn't it happened, why is there a cost overrun, So it's had a tremendous effect in actually, when Prime Minister personally does that kind of oversight, you can imagine what it does to a bureaucracy. Okay, I saw it at that time because I was a bureaucrat. Okay, so as a secretary, I used to be answerable to him because this started to be done for neighboring projects, neighboring country development projects also. Now we adopted that, we internalized it. So once partly he started monitoring it, but I also instituted it within the ministry. So like we spend a weekend saying, okay, let's sit down and look at everything to do with Nepal. Let's look at everything to do with Sri Lanka. Where are we on this? Let's do a Latin America brainstorming. Let us see what is happening in the Pacific Islands. So what has happened is, if you look at projects today, the projects are moving faster, partly because we have, also learned to plan it better, conceptualize it better, do much more integration within the government. We are better resourced, we do that budgetary planning. Our mode of execution is more efficient. So, when I look at the world, starting from our own neighborhood, for example, I remember the first time, one of the early times I went to Nepal, and the first, my carry away was the fuel shortage that they had, and and also the very cumbersome way by which these trucks with fuel used to go up there. Now, we actually sat down with them and worked out a pipeline. That pipeline from Motihari to Amlekanj is a reality. It gives them petroleum at cost, on a kind of a efficiency which comes out of refining in India. It's actually been a game changer. Similarly, they had initially electricity shortages, power shortages.
Yeah.
So again, we did a transmission line.
Yeah.
That transmission line today is helping them to export power to India. Or if I take you, say, to Mauritius, I remember in 2016, I think, we agreed to do a metro. Today, that metro in Mauritius is a model project. When people think of India in Mauritius, they think of that metro because it shapes your image. I was in Tanzania last year. We are doing the Jal Jeevan mission in India, where we are connecting all houses to piped water. We are doing exactly that in Tanzania. There are 28 towns to which Indian companies today actually are taking the water. So imagine in a place like Nepal, if your image is connected with petrol diesel delivery or power exports.
You are a friend in need.
In Mauritius, you are connected with a fantastic metro project. In Tanzania, you are seen as provider of water. In Mozambique, I actually went and where they have this congestion in the capital. So it was interesting. They looked at Mumbai and saw how suburban trains worked. So we did a suburban
Public
train project.
transportation,
I personally rode on that.
You traveled the train here. We saw that.
And in Guyana, we actually delivered a ferry below cost before time. And that ferry has been such a sort of game changer for travel to islands, and travel from point to point on the coast. So today, actually, one part, the world does see the change in India. Okay, every visitor who comes today asks me about, they say, oh, the last time we were here, I had a British Labour Party delegation. For them, the airport was a discovery, driving in from the airport was a discovery. For them, everywhere there was construction going on. Or I had President Macron. So, when President Macron asked me, he said, okay, give me a few examples. I actually told him, I said, look, we are building close to 30 kilometers of highway every day. So you could see his eyes kind of, or if you tell people that every year we are adding 8 new airports.
And so, talking of President Macron, Prime Minister showed him how our digital payments work in the Chai Pe Charcha and all that in Jaipur.
So what has happened is, one part of it was the tech image. One part of it is we are doing, our ease of doing business, investment climate is improved. But a big part of it is today India as a project executor. That is, and this has actually shaped a global image of India. Different governments actually, even for tenders, they take Indian a company today which will execute a project has built a reputation. Tomorrow, it may not be a line of credit, but that company will be taken seriously there because by now they made a name. So it has helped us brand ourselves better. It has been good for our employment and our project exports abroad. But most of all, I think it has been in a way a test that we have ourselves set for ourselves, that we have shown today that as a expanding economy, as one with greater strengths, that we are capable of doing first class work across the world.
So one of the highlights of Why Bharat Matters is the essay about the roads that were not taken.
Yes.
And this many of us have read and have been wondering, because the counterfactual is an important way in history to establish that we had a choice. Sometimes people say that it was a Nehruvian era and he dominated everything, and then so the India went in this path and that was the only path. But you have shown that there were alternatives after independence. The approach we took to the world, especially towards our adversaries and all that. So on that, you have shown that from Ramayana and Mahabharata to Kautilya to contemporary Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, B.R. Ambedkar, you also mentioned Sardar Patel. These greats were already envisaging an India that is tougher and more muscular and is able to push back adversaries and is able to raise the costs of their aggression towards us. It was a different approach which was unfortunately not fully taken on board. So on that front, you have tied a long chain of strategic thought going back millennia until 20th century. But now we are in the 21st century in the Amrit Kal, sir. Next 25 years, we are very hopeful that this new realistic lens that we have now adopted and by which we are counterbalancing our adversaries, we are strengthening our strategic partnerships. You have shown all of that in Why Bharat Matters. My question really is this sustainable going into the next 25 years, Amrit Kal, and for the rest of the 21st century? The legacy of Sardar Patel or of B.R. Ambedkar or of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee or of Sri Krishna or Sri Rama, all the way, can we really continue that into the future? And how do you see that? I mean, we want Modi Sarkar to keep taking this forward, but then the question is for next 25 years or next 75 years, as we grow bigger, can we maintain this Bharat mentality and this Bharat attitude, as you call it?
Well, let me answer it to you in three parts. One reason why I went to the Ramayana is to show that a lot of these traditions, these ways of thinking is there deep in our own culture. We don't, often people associate this with somebody would say Machiavelli or Sun Tzu. We often get names of foreign thinkers sort of thrown at us. I'm not disputing their merit, but I want people to understand that there is a great tradition in India, and if only we understood and appreciated our own practices, heritage, culture better, we ourselves would be drawing strength from that. We don't necessarily have to search elsewhere for that. The second, what you call counterfactual, but I make this point, these are not hypothetical propositions. That I picked three examples, okay? Relations with the US, relations with China, relations with Pakistan, and have tried to demonstrate, and this is not a great scholarly book in that sense. It's a thought-provoking exercise. I have tried to give specific examples to say at that point of time, as the decision was taken, some other leader, and a notable leader, somebody placed a different option before the country. So this is not me saying after 60 years, saying, oh, they made a mistake in 1962. This is Sardar Patel saying in 1950, saying, look, please read China right. Please understand today we have a two-front issue, which, for a polity is a source of great concern. But at that time, Nehru's thinking was to dismiss it. I mean, he actually says for him it's inconceivable that something, I think he uses the word, you can't have a wild adventure across the Himalayas or something like that. So he's completely dismissive of it, because his reading of China is very different from Sardar Patel's reading of China. And subsequently, in different ways, it shows up. The fact that we go to we alienate the Americans by taking up China's cause so strongly. Look, if he had a view, somewhere that China's position was useful to consider, it's one thing. But to go to the extent of actually alienating a very powerful country for the sake of somebody else, from which you actually
backstabbed you ultimately, yeah.
From which you got nothing. And in fact, he uses even the phrase China first. Let us do China first in the UN Security Council. I mean, today we talk of India first. Look at the irony that we were actually talking China first. Now, if you look at the US again, see, there was a tremendous ideological suspicion of the United States. Now, again, to be objective, the United States also did many things. We should not discount it. The United States leant towards Pakistan. But the fact is, at that time, it could be Sardar Patel, it could be Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, it could be Minu Mosani, it could be Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, all of whom argued saying, look, it's not in our interest that our relationship with the United States
we should alienate them so much.
We should alienate them to that degree. Or if you take Pakistan, today it is glaringly obvious. But even at the time when the Nehru-Liaquat Pact was concluded, you have Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee saying very clearly, look at Pakistan, look at the nature of this polity. Do you think these people will really treat the minorities well? You are assuming as though they are just like you, and they are not. So these were cautions, there were warnings, there were alternative opinions. I'm not using it to say somebody was right and somebody was wrong. But I think today, when we look at our America policy, our Pakistan policy, our China policy, or other policies, the younger generation particularly should know that there were debates, there were choices, that there were roads which were even at that time envisaged. So what we did was not inevitable. It was not the only path we traversed. We could have traversed.
And now going into the future, sir,
for
Amrit Kal.
No, and therefore it is important. So coming to my third part, lot of changes. Okay, so you asked me the question. So how do we stay the course? How do we go ahead? And in a way, I would say, in international relations, I've said there in the book that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas has been a very good formula to become a Vishwamitra. But I would say in international relations today, Modi ki guarantee has actually tremendous resonance. If you go to countries who are recipients of vaccine, they know what is Modi ki guarantee. You ask me today, 78 countries who've got better projects on time at cost. They know the value of Modi ki guarantee. So you ask Sri Lanka, that, for Sri Lankans who saw their economy literally melt down day by day, they know what is Modi ki guarantee. So this sense today that you have a country, you have a leader, there is a vision, there is a strength, and there is a view of the world which is a positive, helpful view, where there are questions of, underpinned by concepts of rules, norms, fairness, justice, equity. I think this, in a way, is what the book is about. And I'm very sure today, look, a generation that today has seen an Operation Ganga, a generation which saw how we responded to COVID. I think they know what
the bar has been raised so high, it cannot be taken back or lower.
There's no question of turning the clock back. For them today, when they travel abroad, I hear so many people say this, and they are very ordinary people, saying they feel so much better as Indians today, traveling abroad. They're regarded.
The passport has higher value today.
Yes, with greater respect. So I'm very sure, not only are we not turning back, but we are going ahead next 25 years, Amrit Kal.
And beyond, sir.
And beyond.
So to close, during the Pran Pratishtha of the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, Prime Minister Modi said that ये नए काल चक्र का आरंभ है, a new cycle of time or a new era has begun, and that is the Bharat era as we see it. Now, what are the obstacles that you see, both internal and external, for this new era to continue and to fulfill its course and to meet our great dream of India as the Vishwamitra, Vishwaguru, and as a leading power? Going forward for Bharat, we will stay the course, but then the question is, what are the obstacles? You gave the example of Sri Rama himself, and how many mountains and rivers and the obstacles at every stage in the Ramayana and throughout his life, and how he overcame them with fortitude and perseverance and all these qualities, and you want Bharat to also display those. So going forward, what are the obstacles, and how strong are we really, at our core, is Bharat to withstand these obstacles?
I think we are strong. I think, look, we've had our ups and downs in history. But the fact that we are one of the few civilizational states today still standing there, holding our own in very competitive international relations, we should never underestimate ourselves. I think, again, to me, that is a change too. But will there be challenges? Of course, there will be challenges. I mean, I think there will be challenges internally from people who have in many ways a different vision of themselves, of our future, of
they
their
want to
own,
deny the Bharat itself, the word itself.
yes, of interests. There will be, you see, when you are a pluralistic society, that pluralism, after all, what is it an expression of? It's an expression of a fundamental unity. But if that pluralism is misinterpreted and tries to become like a way of sowing divisions, this has historically dogged us. I mean, you look at our history, that has been, there are those who have tried to, in a sense, consolidate, keep us together and go forward, and those who kind of divided and in a way destroyed the country through that. So, but I think today in this era, it's very clear, which side is winning. The second is there will be international competition. In world affairs is a rough game, and everybody will try everything. But that's where reading the landscape and doing the right things at the right time, having the right relationships, figuring out the right challenges, finding the right solutions, that is the second. And third, of course, at the end of it all, we need that, to rise, to maintain it, we need a vision, we need a kind of a motivation, we need a leadership. So I feel today that if one looks at the domestic mood, if one looks at how we have handled international relations, when I look today at the quality of leadership and the ambition of the vision, I'm very confident we will go forward.
Dr. S. Jaishankar, I want to thank you for sharing such valuable insights with our audience. Always an inspiring conversation with you, and I can tell you millions of people who watch Doordarshan, they've been waiting for this interview, and I'm sure they're going to quote from this. Thank you for writing Why Bharat Matters, sir, because people were looking for an authoritative figure to actually come up with something as intellectually strong, because we have a lot of people in our political class who are good at speeches and at mobilizing the masses, but haven't been able to penetrate the intellectual networks as much. But now we have this work. Now nobody can say that there is no cultural nationalist intellectual output or product that is there, and that all the high quality work comes from only one side of the ideological spectrum. Thank you so much for being on Doordarshan, sir, and we wish you strength. We wish you that you steer Bharat under Prime Minister Modi's leadership for many more years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharan.
Viewers, Why Bharat Matters from Rupa Publications is out. Please read it, especially after this interview. Some of you have already read the book, but then you may want to reread it after this special discussion with Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you so much for watching Indian Diplomacy, and I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.